Hey, good afternoon, VSO patrons and audience. I'm Darryl One, your music director, of course, and this is the Midweek Maestro Message. But rather than just me, these next series of messages are going to be interviews with people that I know and also people in different parts of the world. I thought it'd be interesting for you to hear what's happening during this COVID era in other parts of the world and also in other disciplines. So I have a very special guest that is with me. Her name is Una Twana, so it's not like Sally Smith or anything like that. If you know the country, you would know that that was a Latvian name. She is from Latvia, and how do I know a Latvian that lives in New York City? Well, just very briefly, Una first came to the U.S. To study at Stetson University, where I was the conductor of the orchestra. So I met her that first fateful day when she auditioned for the orchestra, and sight read a lot of orchestral excerpts in a way that just made my jaw drop. She was extremely talented then, and even more so now. But at that time, it was clear that she was a very special musician. And in the time that I got to know her, I found out that she was even more special as a person. So we were together there. She was my concertmaster. She soloed with the Stetson Orchestra, and then she moved on from there, and she's in New York City, and she is one of the top freelance musicians in New York City, playing in Broadway, playing on David Letterman, and all kinds of things like that. And on her bio, which is just a short thing here, saying that she's done all these things with Broadway shows, producers, Wicked, Ragtime, played with artists like Darryl One. No, I don't mean that. Carly Simon, Diane Kroll, Tony Bennett, real people, not like me, and Andrea Bocelli, and the list goes on and on. She could certainly say more about it than I can, but she's living in New York now. I don't know if you can call it living in this COVID-19 era, but she joins us here. So Una, thank you for being a part of this interview process. And maybe you can say a little bit about yourself to our patrons in Victoria.
Well, thank you so much. It is so nice to see you and to reconnect. And thank you for your kind words. You really gave me the platform in this country. You indeed were the first person sort of professionally. That was the very, very beginning of my professional life. And I appreciate everything that you've helped me with and done and taught me. I still remember why I bow my bowings, whether it has to go down or up, and why. And I always tell people that's very important. Since I am a concertmaster in New York City quite a lot, I do get to do bowings a lot. So every little thing comes in handy at some point. You were right.
Of course.
But yeah, right now we are sort of tuckered in. New York City is on pause. And so is music life.
Like the world is.
Like the world is, seems like it, yes. It's a very strange feeling, especially yesterday I was walking with a puppy and walking down Broadway. There is no cars, no people, nothing is happening. It's like aliens just came and left. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, especially for a city like New York. I mean, for those of us who don't live in major metropolitan areas like that, it still seems normal when we go outside and walk around. But certainly, we've seen pictures of and video of New York City, of downtown LA, all the major cities, and as you say, it's very strange for us who don't live there. But for somebody like you who lives that all the time, it must be really unusual.
It's very unusual because especially Broadway, which is obviously my bread and butter, Broadway is shut down. Restaurants that I used to go to where people would just know my order before the show, give me a cup of tea or sandwich, everything is locked up. Nothing is working, nothing is functioning. It's just dead.
Man, well, that's and I know that you, besides Broadway and of course doing these appearances with all these luminaries, that you still do classical, like you see your concertmaster, you play in some chamber orchestras and other orchestras in the area. So you probably have a pretty good view of generally all kinds of music in what is arguably the musical capital of the world. So what do you see happening, and what do you hear from all your friends from not only the Broadway quarters, but film, television, the classical, all that? What do you hear from them? What's happening? Is everybody out? Is anybody working? What are they trying to do to get by, etc.?
Unfortunately, everybody's in the same boat. I always was interested in different types of music. So I do everything from very, very classical, conservative music to crazy rock and roll, electric violin with DJ stuff, and literally everything in between. Weddings of different religions, and that's my cat visiting. and literally everything in between. The only thing probably I don't do is maybe rap and jazz. I just don't know how to. So as far as my colleagues go, unfortunately, we're all in the same boat. Nobody's really working because everything is shut down. There is virtual teaching. So those of us who had teaching jobs, we continued with the kids. In my case, those are really little kids. I teach 5 to 10-year-olds. It's a little hard because if it's a 5-year-old and he or she wants to run around a little bit or play a little toy here or there, or the string goes out, it's challenging, but we are all adjusting. And so a lot of people spend their time making amateur videos. Not my cup of tea, but good for them. So they're learning a new repertoire. I picked up a guitar and viola. So we're sort of, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a tough situation for sure. I think our audiences would probably be interested to know. I mean, since our audiences are used to our orchestra and the procedures and things that make a symphony orchestra, it's quite different for somebody like you. How does somebody who really has no connections of any sort moves to a big city like New York and rises to become a first call Broadway musician, especially considering that the Broadway orchestras are much more select because obviously they're smaller. They don't need to have as many people. I mean, I was reading you were concertmaster for On the Town, for example. I mean, how do you get to that point from being a Latvian violinist who studied at a little university in Florida?
Well, connections, we all know. You have to be very disciplined. Answer your emails immediately. Take the phone call. Be polite. Say yes and show up. Not on time, but early. On time is late. Don't have an opinion at work. Nobody asked for your opinion. They hired you because they want you to play. They don't care whether you are political, whether you're dumb, whether you like the conductor, or whether you just had an affair with a fellow musician. They want to know that you will show up, you'll do your job, you'll say thank you, and you will leave as soon as possible. That policy has served me very well. Of course, there are parties and there are gatherings and there are galas and social events. That's a whole different compartment of freelancing, and that is important too. But mixing both, in my view, is a bad idea. Be prepared. Don't come in running in sweaty, 5 minutes before the rehearsal, open the case and there is 2 broken strings on your violin. Not a good idea, especially if you are in the position of some sort of power, like either principal second or concertmaster or anything that people look up to. I would say, be very clear about yes, no, I always ask how much because it's important. I can't postpone my rent because, you know, there is a misunderstanding about my pay. And people also feel that, you know, everything is checked out. Time, place, what to bring, whether to bring a stand or whether you need an extra light or whether you need to wear long black because there is a shoot happening or whether you want to wear jeans because you can't. You know, it's important. Looks are important. Don't be a slob. Nobody likes sloppy people, you know. Take a shower, do your hair, you know, it takes extra 15 minutes. It's not a major hurdle in your life.
Yeah.
Because again, you never know. There is a video camera somewhere, or there is somebody who wants to promote you, and they come in and you are wearing old tennis shoes, and they go like, well, yeah, but you know, let's go to that person because, you know, it's just more pleasant. Things like that, basic human things. But it's astounding how many musicians don't pay attention to little things like that.
And they're the ones that don't get called back or get fewer gigs.
Yeah, because New York has gazillion very talented, great people. So if I have to pick, I do a lot of contracting, mostly for fun events like weddings and other, you know, social events. I will pick somebody who looks good, who is on time, and who plays well. But all those three things are very important to me. Not necessarily in that order. It's kind of like a package deal.
Yeah, right. And I was going to say, I'm glad you said that because all the things you were saying earlier before, one of the things you left out, but probably because it's assumed that all those things that you said are true. But hey, you got to have the goods. If you're not a good player, you know, and like on a lot of your gigs, I mean, I don't know if it's the case or not, but do you find yourself in situations, especially like you do in studio work, where you show up, they put the music in front of you, and you just got to do it?
They're still printing when you show up. They literally, no, I'm not even kidding. I've been in studio work doing commercials, for example. I used to do, now most of this work is gone to LA, but I used to do Super Bowl commercials, and there would be spot for 5 seconds, for 15 seconds, for 30 seconds, you know, and then you submit that, and then the agency decides what they want. But everything gets adjusted while you're doing it because something is not aligning with the visual, you know, or something is not quite how they want it. Things change all the time. I always tell my kids, learn how to sight read. It will make your life 1,000 times better. If you don't know how to sight read, and if you need to ask every time somebody calls you for work, or can I please look at the music, forget it.
Yeah, right. Let's go back just in time, maybe just only a few months. What would you say like is a typical day for you and or somebody like you? I mean, obviously you do you said you do all kinds of different things. So maybe one day you'll be on some tour playing with whoever, Bocelli or whoever happens to be, but other time you might be in concertmaster for that orchestra that's doing that concert here and there, or there you're doing a Broadway show. But generally, what would be if you could call a typical day, what would you call it, from getting up in the morning to going to bed? That's if you go to sleep.
I know. Well, there is no routine in freelance life, that's for sure. But again, assuming I'm not on tour, which is a completely different lifestyle. But at home, I would normally get up. I would check my emails immediately. My emails would contain either work for the future, which means that I take a look at my book immediately. I never say yes or confirm unless it's in my book. So I put it down and then I email the person back, yes or no. Then dog, cat, breakfast routine. That takes actually astonishingly long time. And then usually I would have at 10 a.m. of something, whether it's a recording or a rehearsal, or we do a lot of kiddie concerts, you know, outreach programs, but something is usually at 10 a.m. Then 2 o'clock again, 2 o'clock. So it's 10 to 1. Then 2 to 5 would be again, either it's a rehearsal, if it's a matinee, Wednesdays and Sundays or Saturdays, depending which show, then you have a show. And then then from 5 to 8, usually I would do, come home, do emails, texting. I do a lot of texting because I also contract, as I mentioned. So there is a lot of logistics. Girls getting lost, forgetting a stand, clients changing their minds last minute, gowns, this and that. I mean, there's gazillion things that always happen. So, and then 8 o'clock again. 8 o'clock is either a concert or a show. I come home. I live right by Lincoln Center. I'm 7 minutes away, walking distance from Lincoln Center. So depending on what my show is, I'm home pretty quickly. We walk the dog, it's usually an hour in the park. And that's basically my day. So again, emails, texts, there's always something.
And if you're doing like a Broadway show, I've heard this from other musicians I know, that sometimes you can be in a show where you're playing in it and the show runs for like 10 years or something like that, or for a long time, and then that means you're playing just that music every night, or maybe even twice a day, for whatever it is, 5 or 6 days a week for years.
Well, Lion King, I've been with Lion King for 20 years now. 20, actually, I think even more, 20 something years. That was my first Broadway show as a sub, and I'm still subbing there, but I'm subbing there very frequently. So yes, I've been with Lion King for 20 some odd years. It becomes a routine, but you are very thankful for a job. And
well, and it's nice that you have you're comfortable with knowing that you can that you're going to be called, that you're going to be your sub, and you've got all these things. So you're not one of those persons that's going, oh my gosh, my diary's only half full. I need to get it filled up.
I am so lucky and so thankful. I have some fantastic contractors that always call me. If they don't call me for work, they call me for recommendations. And I am incredibly humbled by it. It's been a very long-standing relationship with a couple of people that I do really appreciate very much. So, indeed, yeah, I'm very, very lucky.
Right. Well, that's great. One more question. In light of what's happening with the COVID-19, and of course you're in New York, so you've got Cuomo saying this and that. You've got governor. You've got all this kind of stuff that's happening, plus the federal things. What do you see happening in New York City from now going forward? What do you see? What do you see happening for the performing arts in all the disciplines that you're involved in?
Yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball. I really don't know. I am generally an optimistic person, but I am a bit scared about this whole future music thing. I think even regardless of the governors and state that you live in, obviously New York has an advantage. If anything is going to survive, it's going to be New York, things like Metropolitan Opera and things like that. I think it's going to be tough. I am still doing some weddings here and there. So I'm like clinging by the tips of the nails. And so I still have some income and teaching and things like that. But I think we just have to start seriously reassessing how we run music business. And yes, it is a business. I know people say that music, brings you emotional happiness, and that's absolutely true, and music is super important, just like dance and any kind of art, but it has to be run like business. That's why pop music has enormous amounts of money involved, because they make it a business. That's why sports has a lot of big numbers,
Right.
Because it's a business. And if we are stuck like some old Hermitage where you still can't take a picture of the painting, and you still have to wear some crazy dirty slippers because you're going to damage the floor, Nobody's going to go and listen to that.
Yeah.
If you now, even museums, they allow you to take your coffee and take a picture of, Monet or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think classical music it has to start thinking in advance. Don't do 3-hour concerts. I will never go and sit through 3 hours of anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need 5 concerts, concertos in first half and 2 symphonies in the second half, things like that. It's just outdated. We have to go with times, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, and life is so hard. They don't want to, be miserable for 3 hours at night.
Mm. Yeah.
So I think it's just gonna have to change.
Yes, you see that durations certainly have to change. Obviously, if you want to hear a Beethoven symphony, there's not much you can do except play the Beethoven symphony. But they don't want to hear 3 Beethoven symphonies all at one time.
And the concerto, and a little overture, and a little soprano in the middle somewhere. Yeah, play Beethoven symphony. That's what people come for. Right. That's what they want to hear. Those particular people want to hear that particular piece of music. But even when I go to New York Philharmonic concert, I don't remember last time I sat through both parts. I would come and listen to whatever I needed to hear, usually it would obviously involve violin concerto, and I would leave. I can't remember last time I sat through the entire concert. It's just too long.
Mm-hmm. Now, and that's because I think a lot of that's just because it's music, because certainly the time goes by much faster if there's more things involved. Like if you go to a 3-hour Broadway show, that's a little different because you see characters, there's changes going on. I've never been. But
even Broadway show, they for example, Frozen, before all this mess happened, they were redoing Frozen because it was getting too long. Even Broadway shows now, they are seriously reducing. So, and ballets have never been more than 2 hours because of course, it's a very physical situation for the dancers, but no, you're right.
All right. But if the show's compelling, I can't say that any musical theater show that I've ever sat in that I've looked at my watch about the time, because you see the story unraveling and you wonder what's going to happen next. And plus, the music is so varied, I think. And
correct.
It's one thing to listen to a Mahler symphony that's 60 minutes long, but if you're listening to a Broadway show where, there's some guy doing a soft shoe thing, then that's the style it's going to be. And then there's something jazzy, and then there's a ballad. And the styles are so different, I think. And I used to work a Christmas Spectacular. I've done that for 10 or more years now. And Christmas Spectacular is 90 minutes and never a minute over. And it's absolutely perfect. People love it. It's just enough time to get people in and for people to start going like, oh, well, okay, I kind of got the point. Yeah.
But I understand. I mean, again, New York, I think, is a very unique place, So, for example, if you are in Minneapolis or, I just went to play a show, I think it was Les Mis or Miss Saigon, I can't remember even, in South Bend, South Bend will do anything because that's their pride and joy, and their little theater is just so precious. It's a family affair more than anything, so you can't really compare that with craziness that's happening on Broadway, where millions and billions are spent on whatever the show, like King Kong, for example. That was a total abomination. So.
Yeah, right. Oh, gosh. Well, Una, I think it's just fascinating, all the things that you said. And, I'm anxious to see how this video turns out with our patrons. They might be saying, Darryl, we don't mind hearing from you once in a while, but we'd rather hear from that Una Twana that you were talking to.
There you go. My own radio show. Listen, right? I'm home. I have nothing better to do than talk about my life.
I know. So you'll have to do this, and it'll spawn a YouTube channel, and you'll have millions of viewers. Gosh. then
Well, you are definitely going to be involved if that actually happens. But
yeah, a YouTube influencer, you know.
I certainly do hope that people, people get out and about, and I think this whole thing has taught me that we're all in the same boat. We have to help each other. We have to talk to each other. We have to communicate, and try to figure it out, and just pull each other up and be nice and be cordial. And even if you don't like me, that's fine. I don't need to be liked by everybody, but just be normal. Be polite and be just a human being. And I think people are coming together. I think it has brought people closer as a species.
Right. Well, let's hope that that is one of many things that we'll find down the road that have been positive about this whole pandemic thing. And I'm all for civility and treating each other nicely. And hopefully, as you said, we as a species of human being will treat each other much better after all of this is over. So
yeah, it's going to be very interesting how this time will be represented in history books.
Right, that's for sure. Okay, well, Una, thank you so much for being part of this interview.
Thank you.
And
it was a pleasure.
Yeah, best of luck to you in New York, and stay safe and all those good things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I do appreciate your time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.